I took my neighbor to a drive-in movie. Then she climbed into the back seat. The movie can wait. The night I took Emma to the drive-in, I thought I was finally getting one quiet evening where nothing in my life could fall apart. I was wrong. By midnight, the movie screen was still glowing across the parking lot, but neither of us was watching it. Emma was sitting beside me in the back seat of my old car, tears running silently down her cheeks, and I was realizing that sometimes the person you think needs a little romance is actually carrying a heartbreak so heavy that all they really need is someone willing to stay. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small act of caring can change someone's life, please like this story, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. You never know who might be watching tonight while quietly wishing someone would simply stay. I had lived in the same apartment building for almost 3 years before I truly noticed Emma. We had exchanged polite greetings in the hallway, held the elevator for each other, and once argued playfully over whose laundry had been left in the dryer too long. She was the kind of woman who smiled even when she looked exhausted, and somehow that smile made everyone around her feel better. I was different. After losing my father and going through a painful breakup within the same year, I had become an expert at keeping people at a safe distance. I went to work, came home, cooked for one, and pretended I didn't mind the silence. Then one rainy Tuesday evening, I found Emma sitting on the building's front steps with a cardboard box beside her. Her eyes were red, and she was staring at her phone like it had just delivered the final piece of bad news. I didn't ask what happened. Instead, I sat beside her and shared the umbrella I was carrying. After a few minutes, she told me her mother had been admitted to a hospital in another city, and Emma couldn't afford to take time off work to visit as often as she wanted. She felt guilty, helpless, and completely alone. I listened. That was all I could offer. No grand speech. No solution. Just my attention. The next morning, I left a small bag of groceries outside her door with a note telling her not to worry about paying me back. She thanked me later, and that tiny exchange somehow became the beginning of a friendship neither of us expected. Over the following weeks, we started spending more time together. Sometimes we ate dinner in the hallway because neither of us felt like being alone. Sometimes she came over while I cooked. Sometimes we walked around the neighborhood after work and talked about everything except the things that hurt most. One Friday, I mentioned that the old drive-in theater on the edge of town had reopened after years of being closed. Emma's face immediately lit up. She told me she hadn't been to a drive-in since she was a teenager, back when her father used to take her and her mother every summer. So I asked her if she wanted to go. She said yes. I spent the entire Saturday cleaning my car like it was a luxury vehicle instead of a 15-year-old sedan with a cracked dashboard and a heater that only worked when it felt like cooperating. I bought popcorn, chocolate, 2 blankets, and the cheapest flowers I could find at the grocery store. I almost didn't bring the flowers because I was afraid they would make the evening feel like a date. But deep down, I wanted it to be a date. Emma arrived wearing a simple blue sweater and jeans, carrying a small bag over her shoulder. When she saw the flowers, she laughed and asked why I looked nervous. I told her I wasn't nervous. She smiled because she knew I was lying. The drive-in was crowded. Couples sat on lawn chairs beside their cars, families shared buckets of popcorn, and children ran beneath the giant screen before the movie started. For the first time in months, Emma looked genuinely happy. We laughed through the opening scenes. We shared popcorn. At one point, she accidentally dropped a piece into my lap and laughed so hard that everyone around us turned to look. I remember thinking that maybe life was finally giving both of us a break. Then Emma's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Everything changed. Her smile disappeared. She didn't answer the call. She simply turned the phone face down and stared toward the movie screen. I asked if everything was okay. She said yes, but her voice was so quiet that I knew it wasn't. A few minutes later, she asked if we could move to the back seat because she wanted to lie down for a moment. I unlocked the doors, and she climbed into the back with one of the blankets. I thought she wanted space. Instead, she looked at me and gave a small, almost heartbreaking smile. Then she whispered that the movie could wait. I climbed into the back seat too. Emma curled beneath the blanket, staring at the ceiling. She finally admitted that the call had been from the hospital. Her mother's condition had gotten worse, and Emma had been trying to convince herself that everything would be okay because she didn't know how to survive another loss. She apologized for ruining the night. I told her she hadn't ruined anything. She said she felt like she was constantly disappointing people. That was when I understood something. Emma wasn't looking for someone to entertain her. She was looking for somewhere safe enough to stop pretending. So I stayed. We talked for hours while the movie played outside. She told me about her childhood, her father's death, her mother's stubborn optimism, and the fear she carried every morning when she woke up. I told her about my father and the guilt I still felt because our last conversation had ended in an argument. At some point, Emma reached for my hand. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. We simply sat there holding hands in the darkness while the sound from the movie drifted through the closed windows. There was no dramatic kiss. No perfect romantic moment. Just two broken people realizing they didn't have to hide their broken pieces from each other. The next morning, Emma left before sunrise to visit her mother. For the first time, I understood that loving someone wasn't always about getting closer. Sometimes it meant giving them enough space to face what they had to face while making sure they knew they weren't alone. Weeks passed. Emma's mother eventually came home from the hospital, weaker but stable. Emma started spending more time with her. I kept working, cooking, and waiting for the elevator to open every evening. Then one night, I heard a knock on my door. Emma stood there holding the same flowers I had given her at the drive-in. They were dried and faded. She said she had kept them because they reminded her of the first night in years when she didn't feel alone. Then she told me something I never expected. She said the night at the drive-in had changed her. Not because of what happened between us, but because nothing had to happen. I hadn't pressured her. I hadn't tried to turn her sadness into romance. I had simply stayed beside her when she was afraid. She told me that was when she realized she could trust me with her heart. I didn't know what to say. So I asked if she wanted to go back to the drive-in. She smiled. This time, she said she wanted to watch the whole movie. Months later, we returned to that same theater. We parked in almost the exact same spot. The giant screen flickered to life, the smell of popcorn filled the air, and Emma rested her head against my shoulder. Halfway through the movie, she squeezed my hand. I looked at her. She smiled and whispered that this time, the movie didn't have to wait. And somehow, that simple sentence meant more than any love confession ever could. Because our story hadn't begun with a perfect date. It had begun with two lonely people sitting beneath a rainy umbrella, learning that kindness doesn't always fix someone's problems. Sometimes kindness simply reminds them that they don't have to face those problems alone. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you've ever experienced a moment when someone's simple kindness helped you through a difficult time, leave a comment and tell us about it. Your story might be the reason someone else believes in hope again. And before you go, comment, "I choose kindness," if you believe that sometimes the smallest gesture can become the beginning of something beautiful. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in the passenger seat of an old car, carrying popcorn, a faded flower, and the promise that when life becomes too heavy, someone will stay until you're ready to face it again.